Hello, Pacha Party. A very warm welcome to the session. I'm Ankana, your master teacher for social science at Vedanta. Hoping all of you are doing absolutely amazing. Today, guys, we're going to get started with the second session of our chapter Manufacturing Industries and in fact finish it. But before that, let's quickly discuss the answer to the previous session's question. The answer was A. Bhilai Steel Plant, and people who have answered the fastest are Priyanka Pathak, Nandini Joshi and Gitanjali Singh. Guys, my heartiest congratulations to you people who have not been able to make it to the leaderboard. Bacha, you just have to answer this question correctly and the fastest, not just in the live chat but also in the comment section. That's the catch. That's where we pick up the name of the winners from. So this is your index. We're gonna get started with sugar industry and we're gonna finish the entire chapter today. Let's quickly start with sugar industry. Just to give you a quick recap. Also, guys, if you have not watched the previous session already, please go and watch it because we have covered most half of the chapter in that session. Yeah, so we have already started with agro-based industries, which means the industries which get their raw materials from agriculture, and we are going to start with our third agro-based industries, which is sugar industry. But we are actually the second highest producer of sugar in the entire world, and in fact when it comes to gur or khandasari, we are the first highest producers of these things. If we are the second highest producer of sugar, then you have to find out who is the first highest producer and tell me in the comment section. I would love to hear from you people. Guys, see, we know sugar is produced from sugarcane. So we need to also understand few things about sugarcane, right? So one of the things is that because of the sugarcane being dependent on various seasons, the business of sugar making becomes kind of seasonal in nature. At the same time, the raw materials do not come in small masses, or you can say a small number of numbers. It always has to be very bulky, which means the sugarcane have to be huge in number for the production of sugar. At the same time, after they are harvested, you cannot leave them alone for a very long period of time. The longer you leave the sugarcane, the lesser will be its sucrose content. It keeps on reducing, which means the halt. If you give it a halt, the sweetness of it will reduce. More time taken for it to reach the mills, less will be your sugar produced. At the same time, the areas where we will find these sugar mills and the sugarcane production. So naturally, you have understood by this time that the mills are very closer to the fields. Otherwise, the production of the sugar will be complete loss, and it will hardly be. The amount would be very less. Right? So states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu are the states which have producers of sugar cane. Around 60% of these are actually located in UP alone. But these days we have started noticing that lately few changes in the tendency of the mills to concentrate have changed. Earlier they were, as I told you, if you think about it, it was more in the northern or eastern side, but now it has started to shift in the southern western states like that of Maharashtra. The reason behind this is the climate is very suitable for it, okay, because it's slightly cooler. So for the crushing season, it's kind of idle. At the same time, the sugar canes that are found over here have a higher level of sweetness. The sucrose is found to be higher over here. Now, because bacha, the kind of one, it is seasonal, right? Second, the kind of tendency that the sugar canes have, that the sucrose would decrease immediately. It is ideal for the cooperatives to have business successfully in these states. Now, what is the reason behind this? So in the previous session we have discussed what are cooperatives, but your cooperatives are basically those kind of factories. So we learned public, private, etc. So we also learned about cooperative over here in terms of ownership. Cooperatives are the kind of factories which are run by the farmers, the producers themselves, when they come in an organized way together, right? Why is it ideal for them? But if you set up a factory alone for the production of sugar, you cannot do it throughout the season. We just read about it, that it is seasonal in nature. Then what will they do in the entire year? It's not a very profitable idea if you have to earn the profit throughout the year. So it is ideal for the cooperatives to first few part of the year they'll be producing it, and once it's harvested they can produce sugar and make it a very profitable business. But with this, of course, comes a lot of challenges. Now, what is the challenge in production of sugar? But one, of course, is time. Time is the key over here, and that is why transportation is the key over here. The more time it consumes, the lesser will the production and the greater will be the loss. So transportation delay becomes very important. You have to have a perfect network of transportation, and that to be very quick and fast. At the same time, we know that a lot of methods that is used for production of sugar is still very old. So we need new modernized methods. But we have already discussed this, that if there is no modernization, there will be no development. The production and everything takes a toll because of that. So the methods that are used is still very old, and which is not very efficient. At the same time, if we talk about the kind of production it cannot be done throughout the year. It is seasonal. So that again makes it slightly challenging. Now when sugar is produced, how is it produced? Sugarcane is extracted, the juice of the sugarcane is extracted completely out of it, and then is left the fiber, the roughage. Now this roughage, but a lot of you do not know, a lot of us do not know, is very useful. It is very useful for producing energy, heat, right? Electricity can also be produced by using this. At the same time, it can be used to produce paper, bags, it can be used to feed the cattle, etc. Now this fiber that is left, the byproduct, you can say the roughage that is left, is known as baggies. Now this baggies, the use of this has still not been properly defined or found out how to use it properly by the people who are producing it. So that's another challenge that we need to figure out. A lot of industry who are actually producing sugar are also using these baggies for their own production of heat or electricity. But that's the only limited usage of these baggies. We need to expand this, because the kind of amount of baggies we have, we can do wonders with it. Yeah, with that we are done with our agro-based industries. Let's quickly start with mineral-based industries, guys. As you know, agro-based industries were the industries which used to get their raw materials from the agricultural side. Mineral-based industries are the industries which will have their raw materials as minerals, right? Minerals and metals. Simple as that. Now let's start with iron and steel industry being the number one and the basic industry of all. Now what do we mean by basic industries? But if you remember, we have already discussed this in the previous session. Basic industries are the industries which kind of produces the products which further acts as raw materials in other industries, and that is why they form the base and are known as the basic industries, right? And that is what iron and steel industries are as well. When they are produced, they're used to produce maybe machines or certain things which are used by other industries to do further production. Now, the kind of raw materials that is used for this is very bulky, and the produce is also very bulky, and the entire industry is of that kind, and that is why we will call it a bulky industry. Right now, guys, it is always most of the iron and steel industry, if you see, is public sector industry. What do we mean by public sector industry? We just discussed, and we have discussed this in the previous session also. It is dependent on the terms of ownership. So it is mostly owned by the government. It falls under the government. Now what kind of production is done under this industry, bacha? So basically, light industrial, you could say machines and tools, mechanical and electrical goods, all of these things are used to design, to be made and produced using iron and steel. Now, if you see the kind of industries, like the places where these industries are, you will find that it is mostly in the areas where the amount of minerals availability is very rich. For example, Chota Nagpur Plateau. For example, Odisha, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, all these areas you have a huge amount of minerals available for you. Right now, what is the reason that Chota Nagpur Plateau becomes the prime location where all of these industries are located? Guys, I have already told this in the previous session, and I keep on saying this because, as I told you, a lot of points have been discussed, and this is a complete follow-up of that session. So if you have missed session number 1, please go and watch it. So in session number 1, we have already discussed that multiple reasons that determines the location of a factory. The same thing is happening over here as well. Locations are very it becomes very important that the raw materials are easily available. That is one major factor. Chota Nagpur Plateau is very rich in minerals, and that makes it very a major reason why all these factories are actually located in this area. At the same time, for exportation, the ports have to be closer. Now Chota Nagpur Plateau, if you see, bacha, the Bay of Bengal is very close, and all the ports on Bay of Bengal, or the Eastern Ghats, you could say, is easily available for these goods. Then of course, availability of labor and cheap labor. This industry requires a lot of skilled and cheap labor that is also readily available over there. Now this area is also rich in coal, which also kind of ensures a good supply of power and electricity. So that of course is there. Then of course also because it is closer to the port and the ghats and a and a water body, the availability of water in this area is very rich, which is also very important. Now and the next thing that becomes very important is the market. The consumers should be closer by, and that also is happening over here. The kind of market it has over here is very ideal for iron and steel. Now, when was the very first industry set up? You have to find out and tell me. But in 1950, interestingly, very interestingly, in fact, China and India were producing equal amounts of steel. The quantity of steel produced was absolutely equal. But today, China is of course leading over here. But when it comes to sponge iron, we are the largest producers of that, and we are the third among the entire, crude steel producers in the entire world, according to 2016 report. In fact, the per capita consumption, which means per person consumption in a year of steel, is around 70.9 kilograms. Per individual. That's like a good amount, but it is comparatively lesser when it comes to the world average, which is around 224.5 kilograms. But you might be thinking, ma'am, how is this? Why are we even comparing this? But the more amount of steel and iron is consumed, it gives us an understanding that more development in terms of industrialization, in terms of setting up factories and industries and machines is happening. That gives you a sense of growth in a way, and that is why it becomes important for the consumption of this to increase. Now this is the process of manufacturing steel. Guys, you might try to memorize that and understand this. See, you should definitely learn this. There's no harm in enhancing your knowledge, but it is not important from examinations perspective. They will hardly ask you something from here. What becomes more important is what kind of location is required, which are the places where it is there, what are the different challenges with the production, what are the different importances of these industries. All these things becomes more important. Location and you could say challenges of each and every industry. Okay, the next thing that we need to know is, which is again important, is which all places do we find these industries, right? So this is a map which tells you where these industries are. Guys, you can quickly have a look over here. Over here in the Chota Nagpur plateau, we see most of the industries being crowded, in some parts of here and there in the southern area as well. Now, what are the challenges of iron and steel industry? But as I told you, it needs a lot of power, and that is the reason why it is of course there in Chota Nagpur plateau, but there is irregularity of power supply even there. So that becomes the very first challenge. Then of course, because it's such a bulky industry, it needs good amount of labor also, but the productivity of these laborers are very low, which is another problem. Why is it low? Because they're not very skilled, they're not very knowledgeable, they're just going and working over there. Then these kind of industries need proper heat, they need to produce proper heat energy, because a lot of melting, a lot of fluxing, all of these things are happening with the help of heat only. And how do they generate heat? Using coal, using coking coal, right? And these coal, although available, but they're not available in great abundance in our country. And also because it's a non-renewable resource, it takes a lot of time for production, for it to get produced. At the same time, although it's available, but it comes at a certain cost, which is not so low, which is not so economical, and it is kind of high. So that is another challenge that the industry of iron and steel faces, along with the last one, that is poor infrastructure. But by poor infrastructure, we just do not mean like a good building and stuff. It means good connectivity, it means good transportation, all these facilities that will make it easy for its expansion. But what are the developments that have happened in terms of this industry? But most of the people are actually, if I talk about public sector, the most of the production of steel is happening through SAIL, right? Steel Authority of India Limited. Of course, we import good amount of steel as well. Now, you might be thinking, ma'am, if we are producing so much, why are we importing? Because the amount of steel that is produced, Bache, is actually consumed by us. It's just good enough for our domestic consumption and demand. So, which means for extra, we need to import. But what has just made it more easy for us is the liberalization and the foreign direct investment, which has completely made this industry grow and boost. Now with that we come to the second metal, which is aluminium smelting. This is the second most popular metallurgical industry in India. Now you might be thinking, ma'am, why is the second most important? But it is actually cheaper than iron. Okay, however, Iron beats it in so many ways, but it is cheaper than iron. That makes it second most popular. At the same time, when you mix it with other metals, when you form alloys of aluminium, it forms very strong alloys and becomes way stronger. At the same time, it has so many merits, like it does not corrode easily. It is corrosion resistant, which means it does not get rusted easily. It is very light, it's not very heavy, and also it is a good conductor of heat, and is highly malleable. Malleable and ductile we have done in chemistry. Malleable basically means that it can be beaten into thin sheets. Okay, now the kind of raw material that is used for it is very bulky, which is actually bauxite. Okay, now you see that all these things that we use to produce, I mean, like all this aluminium that is produced is further used for the production of aircrafts, utensils and wires. And that is why it becomes very important for us that we provide them proper electricity, because all of this beating and the whole process requires good amount of power, and the raw material also has to come at a minimum cost. Now guys, remember, all of these industries need raw materials like coal and the bauxite, everything at a lower cost. All of these becomes a challenge for this industry, because the costing is a problem, because regular supply of power is a problem. Now where do we find these industries, aluminium industries per se? In Odisha, West Bengal, Kerala, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu. You can see it marked on the map as well. Now guys, this is the process of manufacturing aluminium, how bauxite is converted into alumina, and then that is converted into the cryolite. So you don't have to focus a lot on this, but it is just good for your understanding. With that, we now move to chemical industries. This is another industry which is diversifying, which is growing, right? We see both kind of large scale as well as small scale industries over here, operating in both organic and inorganic sectors. So you have already read about this, and in fact you'll get to know more about this in 11th and 12th. You'll have organic chemistry, you'll have inorganic chemistry, and you'll be able to differentiate between into it. So these both kind of industries exist over here. In fact, if you talk about organic materials, what are these organic materials? So synthetic rubber, plastics, dye stuffs, all of these things combine part of the organic material, the organic chemicals, right? Now these chemical plants, bacha, you will find mostly located near oil refineries. Okay, because that is what is useful for them, right? Raw materials, materials for power supply, all of these things make it very important. See, remember again, location is determined where, I mean, like by where all you find most of the factors which makes it ideal for that particular factory to run at the lowest cost. Now when you talk about inorganic chemicals, which it includes like sulfuric acid, nitric acid, alkali, soda ash, caustic acid, soda, etc. Now these chemical industries are in fact their largest consumer. They're not just the producer, but they're the largest consumer also. So they're very interdependent. For example, sulfur, when is used, is used in sulfuric acid production. So whatever one industry produces is used by the second industry in their own domain. However, we see that they're further processing to obtain other chemicals also for various purposes, like that of industrial application, for agriculture and consumers, etc. Now the next thing what we are going to move on is to fertilizer industry. But they are mostly centralized around what they use is nitrogenous fertilizers, phosphatic fertilizers, ammonium phosphate and complex fertilizers. So these complex fertilizers would have a combination of potash, phosphate and nitrogen. Now this potash is something that is not viable for us to produce over here. It's not easy for us, and hence we import it, all of it. Okay, now the production of fertilizers just got a boost and grew a lot after the Green Revolution in the 1960s. You know that as per Green Revolution, they kind of promoted the uses of fertilizers a lot. So the major producers you'll actually find in these areas of Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab and Kerala. They contribute to more than half of the country's produce. Other regions are Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Rajasthan, Bihar and etc. Then we come to cement industry, where again the raw materials that are used are very bulky. For example, limestone, silica, alumina and gypsum. Now again guys, what do they need? The production of cement. So coal, electric power, railway transportation. Why railway transportation? Because the raw materials are bulky, the produced good is bulky, it needs a proper transportation system which is also economical. Now we know that it is used for the construction of different establishments, of roads, of buildings, and determines in great amount the development of any nation. Now you might be thinking, ma'am, how can cement determine development? But how cement determines development is that the more cement is being used, the more construction is happening, which shows growth in a country. Okay, so that is what we mean by this development, how cement production is related to development. Now the first cement plant was actually set up in Chennai in 1904, and this grew after independence because more construction, more development started happening after independence. Now these cement industries, but you will find more concentrated in Gujarat, and you might be thinking, why in Gujarat though? I mean, like, is limestone more over there? Is gypsum more over there? Which raw material is more over there? Is labor more over there? Cheaper labor? No, it's none of that. The major reason is the transportation becomes very easy to the consumers. The consumers being Middle East, East Asia, Africa, South Asia, the countries which are growing a lot, which is having a lot of construction, right? So because of this, the port availability over there in this area makes the industries establishment of cement industries establishment in a greater amount in these areas, and the quality of production that we do, bacha, is very good, and that is why we are doing very well in this production as well as export. Now the next industry that we're going to talk about is automobile industry. So automobile industry, as you know, provides us vehicle for quick transportation. In fact, even for these transportation of these industry, I mean, like, these produced automobiles, they even provide vehicles for that purpose also. Huge trucks, so trucks, buses, bicycles, motorcycles, all of these are produced under this industry. Now the liberalization, now you might be thinking, ma'am, this is the second time you're using liberalization. What is liberalization? But liberalization was basically the removal of the trade barriers, okay, the restrictions, the rules, barriers that were there earlier imposed by government. They were eventually removed, and that actually increased the demand of new and contemporary models in the market. Earlier, only few models of automobiles were seen in Indian market because we did not have access to the international market. But now you see variants of cars, now you see variants of companies and brands of cars in India. And if you see the places where you find most of these producing industries for automobiles, it is Gurugram, Mumbai, Pune, Chennai, Kolkata, Lucknow, etc. Then comes information and technology. This industry is on fire these days. In fact, Bangalore is the center for this and is also known as electronic capital of India or Silicon Valley of India. Why? So it is because the number of industries we have over here. This question is also important for your map marking. In fact, it was asked in your sample paper, IT park of the biggest IT hub of India, which is Bangalore. Now other important centers are Mumbai, Delhi, Hyderabad, and all, etc. Right? But this industry is very famous for its wide range of product. It covers right from transistors to televisions, from telephones to radars, computers, and other equipments, all of it that is required by telecommunication and computer industry. Now apart from that, if you see, of course Bangalore is the center, but apart from that we have few more major centers, for example Noida, Mumbai, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Pune. Now it has had a huge impact on the employment generation. We know this is a part of the tertiary sector which has given a huge amount of people their employment, and the key success to this is the number of productions they're doing, right from hardware to software. Another reason for this industry growing so much is because of its business process outsourcing, which is also known as BPO. In fact, this question has been asked in your sample paper of 2021. BPO makes it very important. Now you might be thinking, ma'am, what is BPO? But what is happening is outsourcing means that something I'm not doing on my own, I'm giving the responsibility for it to somebody else. So in BPOs is done by multinational companies which have set up in different places. What these companies try to do is cut their cost of production or whatever they're doing, and they need to assist their consumers, and they want them to be assisted continuously over call, and that is what the BPOs do through their call centers. The next what we are going to talk about is industrial pollution and environmental degradation. So of course industrialization is having all of this growth and development, but that comes with a very big challenge and con and downside to it, which is pollution, the kind of pollution that it is causing, which keeps on every day increasing every day and cannot be overlooked. We cannot ignore it. And there are 4 types of pollutions which is caused by it, but it is air, water, land and noise. Let's quickly understand about that. See, air pollution, if you talk about, is caused because of the presence of high proportions of sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxide in the air. And in fact, the airborne particulate materials that is over there contain both solid and liquid particles like dust, like sprays, mist, excuse me guys, and of course smoke. Now these particles are very harmful. They affect the health of animals, plants, humans, everybody, and cause huge damage to everything around. Not just in fact living beings, even non-living beings. They in fact even corrode the buildings, the metals that's around us, and in general the atmosphere and the planet as a whole. And they also cause diseases like respiratory problems and other stuff to us, irritation in your respiration, and all of these things infects your lungs. It gets very difficult to survive in this, and all these gases which is also toxic in nature, inhaling them is not at all good for anybody. Example, guys, it has already caused a lot of damages, and you have already, I'm sure, heard about Bhopal gas tragedy. That is an example of the air pollution. Then comes water pollution. How is it caused? But you would know that most of the industries, what they do is they dispose of their extra materials, whatever their wastage is, in the water itself. Now it could be organic, it could be inorganic, any kind of industries, but what they do is they dispose of their wastages into the rivers directly. Now it could be from dyeing, petroleum refineries, tanneries, electroplastic industries, anybody. But these things, the dyes, the detergents, the acids, the metals that is released into the water is very harmful. It just disturbs the whole life of the aquatic system. It disturbs the whole aquatic system right over there. Fly ash, phosphogypsum, iron, steel, these are few other solid wastages that you will find over there, which is very harmful for everybody, the plants, animals and human life. In fact, humans, because the aquatic animals are consuming it and then we are consuming them, through them it is also entering our body. Then the next type of water pollution is through thermal pollution. Now a lot of these industries not just actually dispose wastages, they actually produce wastages which are very hot. Okay, the temperature is very high. So that is something that again is put into these places, into the water bodies. What is happening right now? See, fishes are living at a particular temperature. Now hot water enters over there and disturbs their whole environment and aquatic system, and that is what causes a lot of problem over here. At the same time, nuclear plants are also disposing of their extra wastages over here. But imagine one nuclear bomb destroyed Hiroshima and this place in Japan for so many generations. If it is continuously being disposed in a place, in a particular place, what kind of adverse effects will it have on the people around that area and the people consuming that water? It causes cancer, it causes problems like miscarriages, birth defects and so many other stuff. And all these things, the glass, the harmful chemicals, industrial effluents is making the soil nearby, it is also absolutely useless. And the rainwater, what is happening is, see, even if it is disposed in the soil, and you might be thinking, ma'am, it is not going into the water now, it's in the soil, it will get disposed at one point, it will just it will vanish at one point. It doesn't. When rain happens, all these materials kind of get mixed up with the rainwater, and then it goes down into the groundwater level, to the final water table, and that is what we ultimately consume. Then the next type is noise pollution. Bacha, this is very simple to understand. The amount of construction, amount of machines running produce a lot of noise. The vehicles running by, all of these things, what they're causing is a noise pollution, which further leads to problems like having defects in hearing, people going deaf, causing them anxiety and rising of their blood pressure, psychological effects and etc. Then now we need to understand how can we control this environmental degradation. This in fact was your question given in your sample paper of 2021. So bacha, first of all these products that is disposed, that can actually be treated. You do not necessarily have to put these hot wastages into the by the industries into these water bodies. So that's one thing that we can do. Then of course water needs to be recycled and reused. So a lot of water that we just dispose of, we waste, should not be done like that. Rain harvesting should be done. The water should be recycled for planting trees, for the uses of for the purposes of using it in flushes and so many other things where we do not need fresh water. Water should be recycled and used. Now there are three ways of treating this the industrial effluents that we are talking about that should not be directly disposed. One is primary treatment, where you are doing it through machines, screening, grinding, sedimentation. Then of course there are biological process such as planting trees, rainwater harvesting, and then the third one is the tertiary treatment of chemical and physical and biological processes like that of recycling. Now these are few points apart from what we have already discussed that kinds of helps us in minimizing the overall environmental pollution. So basically, see, all the machines that we are using, if we put on silencer over it can reduce the noise pollution, right? If we are actually not releasing the smoke directly without filtering it out in the air, it will help us from air pollution. Then of course, particulate matter in the air can be reduced by fitting the smokestacks to factories. All these are measures. You can take a screenshot and make a list of these points, will help us in minimizing the environmental pollution. And with that, we are done with our chapter. Let's quickly look at your homework question. But before that, I just quickly want to remind you about Vedantu Pro subscription. But all these problems that you guys were facing have now been solved with Vedantu Pro subscription. And it comes with a good amount of bonuses. It comes with unlimited live classes. All classes will be live. You don't have to worry whether it is premiered or not. You will have access to all the micro sessions, all the crash courses. You will get in-class live performance reports, and of course a lot of personalized attention. Your doubts will be personally solved by the class teachers and master teachers. All you need to do is go click on the description link given in the description box, or that is pinned in your comment section. Then choose your grade, choose your board, check out all the details and click on the get subscription button. Then you get three options of 1 month, 3 month and 6 months. Whichever is the most suitable for you, go ahead with that, and you can actually avail a huge amount of discount on these plans by applying this code, which is my code AKE PRO. But you just have to go on the link in the description, given in the description box or pinned in the comment section. And here is your homework question. Which of the following led to expansion of fertilizer industry? With this, we have come to the end of the session. Guys, do not forget to like the video and do not forget to subscribe to the channel, because the moment the next video comes, you should get the notification immediately. Also guys, do tell me in the chat box, in the comment section, how did you like the video, and make sure to put your doubts in the comment section so that we are able to pick it up for doubt and mentee session. Also, your answer is supposed to go in there, not just in the live chat, so that you can make it to the leaderboard. With that, we are done over here. I'm signing off. I'll see you guys in the next session. Till then, take good care of yourself, guys. Have a great day ahead. Bye.